Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we'll put a spotlight on an amazing nonprofit that has been fighting human trafficking since 2012. We'll be talking to the CEO of Unbound Now next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, I think most Americans would be shocked that the human trafficking problem in our country is so severe. Most people like to think, no, not in my backyard, but no, it's happening right here. And somebody who knows that very well is a man who's on the front of that fight, Brian Anderson. He is the CEO of Unbound Now. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that myth. I mean, people think it's happening in a third world country, but not here.
Yeah, it's commonly thought of as an over there problem, but in reality it is right here in our communities, in our neighborhoods. It hides in plain sight, and we're privileged and honored to get to lean in to the fight.
Okay, tell us more about the nonprofit. You guys have been around since 2012.
Absolutely, yeah. 2012 was when we started off. We started in Waco, Texas with one location. Fast forward over 10 years of developing relationships with law enforcement, building professional capabilities, long-standing support from our founding church, to eventually where we're at today as a standalone, independent 501c3 nonprofit with 8 domestic locations and 3 international locations, staff of 100 people, leaning into the fight.
That is amazing. We're going to hear much more from Brian in a second. Let's show this overview video.
Unbound Now is a global leader in the fight against human trafficking. When we started this work in 2012, it was tempting to have this dramatic vision of rescues in our minds. 12 years in, I can tell you that this work is far more painful than I ever would have imagined. But the stories of freedom are worth everything we have and more. Across the world, through our relationships with international law enforcement, U.S. embassies, United States governor's offices, and our local partners, we support the survivors often from the moment they escape through their journey to restoration. We don't walk away when a survivor's journey gets tough. We stay through the night. And when new survivors are found, we respond within 90 minutes to their call for help. This work started with one survivor in our own community. And since that time, we've grown to serve in over 13 locations around the world, reaching millions of people with awareness and prevention and serving more than 2,200 survivors. To this day, serving survivors remains at the core of our mission. Our amazing staff operate a 24/7 hotline, giving survivors access to this critical help. And we call our survivor services advocacy.
What is an advocate? From the moment a victim escapes and is connected with us, advocates provide trust-based relationship and comprehensive practical support as they journey to restoration. First, they start with safety. They sit with survivors and actually write a safety plan, ensuring that the survivors have the proper safety measures in place physically and online. Oftentimes, this includes placement in safe housing at our residential care center or with one of our trusted partners. Then comes the comprehensive services, guiding survivors through counseling and therapy, medical care, establishing safe community and friendships, resuming their education and career pathway development. This is the important work of pursuing holistic healing, and our advocates are there every step of the way, providing the foundational elements, love and trust.
If you have ever been the victim of loss or trauma, you know that healing is not linear. Our survivors experience the same thing, journeying through grief, sorrow, getting to know a life free from exploitation, a life where they are free to make their own decisions and have ownership over their own future. sometimes for the first time in their lives. It was always clear that we could not do this alone. I remember when we decided to launch our very first coalition at the county level, inviting friends and colleagues from around the criminal justice system to aid these survivors. No one organization can do this alone. These coalitions have been a powerful framework for allowing professionals from across sectors and cities to link arms so that no victim falls through the gaps. Our teams lead trainings and prevention work in hotels, medical centers, schools, refugee camps, border crossings around the world, preventing people from ever being trafficked in the first place and empowering them to then be an active part of the fight against injustice.
We have 4 daughters, and this year we're celebrating the birth of our very first grandbaby. Our grandkids will know quite a turbulent world even as we have. As we sit around the table with them in the years to come, I know the time will come when they will ask how we responded to the injustices of our day. The answer to that question starts with what we do now.
We're not ones for small planning, smooth knees, or colorless dreams. We aren't ones who flinch in the face of sacrifice or run from adversity. I want to give them a legacy to run into, full speed ahead. I want them to find courage for their own lives, knowing that we were in the fight too. We invite you to join us advocating for freedom and the end to human trafficking.
So Brian, so people can understand the enormity of the problem, I'm sure there's people watching this video right now who says, why don't they just get out? Why don't they just escape in the middle of the night?
Yeah, that's a great question. We got to put it in context. So trafficking is the intersection between supply and demand in the trafficking ecosystem. On the demand side, you have a range of very sophisticated trafficking operations that are looking to maximize profit. They want to make money. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have families in desperation needing money to survive. And so in both of those circumstances and in everything in between, you have a trafficker who is trying to make money off of the exploitation of someone else. And that brings us to the supply side of the equation, right? This is where you have a victim who typically has some form of vulnerability. There's something going on in their life that makes them exposed to seeking comfort, seeking safety, seeking trust elsewhere. And so as they go look for that, traffickers, wherever they're coming from along that spectrum, will seek to exploit that. And so we see often where clients look online for romance, for a way out, for an alternative reality that's different from what's going on at home. And but the folks engaging on the other side of the line are not a trusted soon-to-be boyfriend. It's a trafficking operation that has sophisticated social media presence that is preying on kids. And so it is very much an exploitation of a vulnerability. And once they're inside, once they get pulled in, it is nearly impossible to leave that life without some form of interdiction. The coercion is so thick. There's drug dependencies that get created. There are threats of violence, threats to kill family members, threats to expose what's going on. And so the shame gets layered, the risk and threats get layered, and you find yourself, or victims find themselves in a position where there is no way out, and they're stuck.
Wow. Well, thank God for your organization and what you're doing. I urge everybody to follow them on social media because they produce all these wonderful videos, including this survivor story.
In 2022 September, a 17-year-old girl was at the airport and going abroad. We noticed that she was sad and scared. And she was traveling with someone who she said was her brother. And after we asked a few questions, her brother took her away. This was a human trafficking case. Human trafficking is a big problem here, especially in the form of sexual exploitation and forced labor. Many Mongolians are being trafficked within the country and abroad. In recent years, 40% of the identified victims of human trafficking were minors. Our monitoring work is to intercept someone when we believe that if they are in the process of being trafficked or at high risk of being trafficked. And it requires us to be alert and have sense of urgency at all times. Within the border monitoring project, we have intercepted 25 victims and high-risk passengers. I always remember the time when the 2 teenage girls were going to China to work, and it was right before the pandemic. Someone had paid their travel expenses and was waiting for them across the border. So we intercepted and helped them safely return home to Ulaanbaatar city and referred this case to the police. Right after this case, Mongolia closed its borders. We were so glad that we could intercept them right before the pandemic, and they are now safe within the country.
Over the last 10 years, the Unbound Now Mongolia team has educated over 8,000 men, women, and children about the tactics of a trafficker to empower them to be safe. They have trained over 50 churches, and they've run incredible media campaigns that have reached 2.5 million people. They have formed a collaborative approach, working with law enforcement and service providers to do the best service to identify and recover victims. We are so proud of the team here and all that they've accomplished. And we invite you into the next 10 years of what we're doing in Mongolia and what we're doing around the world.
Such a powerful video, and as you made the point, you have operations all over the world. So tell us how this story relates to some of the other things you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, our team in Mongolia is our longest standing international operation. They do great work, as you saw in the video, of border interdictions, powerful stuff. Stateside here, things look a little bit differently because we have the ability to engage with law enforcement in a different way. And so stateside here, across our domestic locations here in Texas and Louisiana, this year so far in just 2024, we've had the privilege of serving over 1,300 victims of trafficking at various stages in their journey, where we get to engage with them. And it starts with 24/7 crisis response, where we are there on site with law enforcement, providing medical attention, getting them to the hospital, meeting immediate needs. And then that begins a very long-standing, our intent is for a long-standing relationship with the survivor, being the one relationship in their life, in often many, many years, that doesn't want anything from them. A trust-based relationship to be their advocate, to be their champion as they take those next steps in their lives. So that all kind of fits within survivor advocacy. Another big thing that we do is train and educate the communities and law enforcement and professionals on how to identify and safely report victims of trafficking to law enforcement. And so far this year, we have trained over 13,000 professionals across the state in that. And then the third piece of it, to round it out, is on the prevention side, to help kids resist the coercion of traffickers and prevent them from getting pulled into the system from the beginning. A very powerful thing that we get to do. Over 11,000 kids just this year alone in Texas and Louisiana, we've been able to empower with the knowledge they need to stay safe online, to resist the coercive efforts of traffickers, and never get pulled in the first place.
And Brian, I know you're a nonprofit. How can people get involved?
Yeah, if you check out our website at unboundnow.org, you can read more about our programs, our services, our staff, and links to give there. We encourage you to join the fight and lean in with us. Every donation makes a direct impact on the front lines against trafficking.
Thank you so much. You're doing the Lord's work. We're going to end with the website one more time, which is unboundnow.org. The great Brian Anderson. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.